The more you know? Thoughtful face. Did you know? Under the Articles of Confederation, both legislative and executive government were vested in the Congress. As it was and still is in Britain, the presidency of Congress was a mostly ceremonial position, but the office did require Hanson to serve as neutral discussion moderator, handle official correspondence, and sign documents. Hanson found the work tedious and considered resigning after just 1 week, citing his poor health and family responsibilities. Colleagues urged him to remain because Congress at that moment lacked a quorum to choose a successor. Out of a sense of duty, Hanson remained in office, although his term as a delegate to Congress was nearly expired. The Maryland Assembly re-elected him as a delegate on November 28, 1781, and so Hanson continued to serve as president until November 4, 1782. The Articles of Confederation stipulated that presidents of Congress serve 1-year terms, and Hanson became the first to do so. Contrary to the claims of some of his later advocates, however, he was not the first president to serve under the Articles nor the first to be elected under the Articles. When the Articles went into effect in March 1781, Congress did not bother to elect a new president. Instead, Samuel Huntington continued serving a term that had already exceeded a year. On July 9, 1781, Samuel Johnston became the first man to be elected as President of Congress after the ratification of the Articles. He declined the office, however, perhaps to make himself available for North Carolina's gubernatorial election. After Johnston turned down the office, Thomas McKean was elected. McKean served just a few months, resigning in October 1781 after hearing news of the British surrender at Yorktown. Congress asked him to remain in office until November, when a new session of Congress was scheduled to begin. It was in that session that Hanson began to serve his 1-year term. A highlight of Hanson's term was when George Washington presented Cornwallis's sword to Congress. Ever wonder why John Hanson Monument statue was bronze, in his skin tone living color? Thoughtful face. The bronze statue of Hanson in the National Statuary Hall collection. In 1898, Douglas H. Thomas, a descendant of Hanson, wrote a biography promoting Hanson as the first true president of the United States. Thomas became the driving force behind the selection of Hanson as one of the 2 people who would represent Maryland in the National Statuary Hall collection in Washington, D.C. Hanson was not initially on the shortlist for consideration, but he was chosen after lobbying by the Maryland Historical Society. In 1903, bronze statues of Hanson and Charles Carroll by sculptor Richard E. Brooks were added to Statuary Hall. Hanson's is currently located on the 2nd floor of the Senate Connecting Corridor. Small versions of these 2 statues, maquettes, sit on the President's desk in the Senate chamber of the Maryland State House. Some historians have questioned the appropriateness of Hanson's selection for the honor of representing Maryland in Statuary Hall. According to historian Gregory Stiverson, Hanson was not one of Maryland's foremost leaders of the Revolutionary era. In 1975, historian Ralph Levering said that Hanson shouldn't have been one of the 2 Marylanders chosen, but he wrote that Hanson probably contributed as much as any other Marylander to the success of the American Revolution. In the 21st century, Maryland lawmakers have considered replacing Hanson's statue in Statuary Hall with one of Harriet Tubman. Things that make you go thoughtful face. John Hanson National Memorial, located in front of the Frederick County Courthouse in Frederick, Maryland. The idea that Hanson was the forgotten first president of the United States was further promoted in a 1932 biography of Hanson by journalist Seymour Wemyss Smith. Smith's book asserts that the American Revolution had 2 primary leaders, George Washington on the battlefield and John Hanson in politics. Smith's book, like Douglas H. Thomas's 1898 book, was one of a number of biographies written seeking to promote Hanson as the first president of the United States. Regarding the opinion, historian Ralph Levering stated, "They're not biographies by professional historians, they aren't based on research into primary sources." According to historian Richard B. Morris, if a president of Congress were to be called the first president of the United States, a stronger case could be made for Peyton Randolph of Virginia, the first president of the First and Second Continental Congresses, or for John Hancock, the president of Congress when that body declared its independence. The claim that Hanson was a forgotten president of the United States was revived on the internet, sometimes with a new assertion that he was actually a black man. An anachronistic photograph of Senator John Hanson of Liberia has been used to support this claim. In 1972, Hanson was depicted on a 6-cent U.S. postal card, which featured his name and portrait next to the word patriot. Historian Irving Brandt criticized the selection of Hanson for the card, arguing that it was a result of the old hoax promoting Hanson as the first president of the United States. In 1981, Hanson was featured on a 20-cent U.S. postage stamp. U.S. Route 50 between Washington, D.C. and Annapolis is named the John Hanson Highway in his honor. There are also middle schools located in Oxon Hill, Maryland, and Waldorf, Maryland, named after him. A former savings bank named for him was merged in the 1990s with Industrial Bank of Washington, D.C. In the 1970s, a descendant of Hanson, John Hanson Briscoe, served as Speaker of the Maryland House of Delegates, which passed a measure establishing April 14 as John Hanson Day. In 2009, the John Hanson Memorial Association was incorporated in Frederick, Maryland, to create the John Hanson National Memorial and to educate Americans about Hanson as well as to educate people about the many myths written about him. #Indigenous MERS #Tribal Wars of America #Bronze Feather Tribes of America #The More You Know